Well, hello everyone. It is Friday. It's 12 p.m. Central Time. This is Steph Lee, the founder of Host Agency Reviews. And thank you for joining us for the Friday 15. So for those of you that are watching on YouTube, you know that there's a co-host with me today. So welcome Connie Miller with Montecito Village Travel. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Stephanie?
Oh, I'm wonderful. It's Friday.
Gotta love Fridays.
I know. Gotta love it. So for those of you, if you're tuning in for your first time, this is where every Friday, 12 p.m. Central Time, we answer the questions that you have submitted. So if you have a question about the travel industry, can be about anything, you can go ahead and you can submit your question by going to hostagencyreviews.com/Friday15. So a few quick announcements before we jump into our questions for today. So just a reminder, we're going to be plugging this for the next couple months, but Host Week is coming up in January. We have finalized, we had 75 submissions for speakers this year, which was amazing. And there were so many wonderful ones. So thank you for all of you who submitted them. We have narrowed it down and we have our speaker list, which we'll be putting up on the website probably within the next couple weeks, but it is going to be an amazing Host Week. So if you would like to register and you haven't already, it's a free event. You can either scan the QR code if you're on YouTube, or if you're listening, you can go to hostagencyreviews.com/hostweek and register there. So let's see. I think that's all. So Connie, let's get into our questions for today. This first one is from Anonymous, and they say, love the Friday 15, listen every week. Thank you for that, Anonymous. I have two questions. So first one, let's go over this one first, Connie. How do hotels view takeover bookings? Does it appear that I am a travel advisor and injecting myself into the transaction simply to collect a commission costing them money when a reservation has already been made? What's your experience?
Well, this is an interesting question. And when I saw that coming in, I did a little research. I talked to a lot of our advisors, our director of leisure sales. I also spoke with a hotelier because I kind of knew
That's
the answer.
Great, Connie.
I do my homework. Okay.
I know. Amazing. Okay. Tell us everything.
Generally, most of the advisors I talk to do not take over hotel bookings. And here's why. Number one, only the traveler can release the booking. So you have to have the traveler willing to do that. Number two, you don't know what type of booking they've made. It could be a non-refundable rate. It could be the last one in that room category. That's another reason not necessarily to do that. And yes, the hoteliers do feel that it is their marketing efforts that have brought the clients to them. So it's a little bit of bad form. However, a case could be made. Say, for example, a friend of yours was booking and it was a Saturday and they didn't think to call you and they booked a Four Seasons hotel. And your agency is a Four Seasons preferred partner. So they've built that relationship with your host agency. They built that relationship with you. So you would actually had that traveler booked through you, they would have gotten added amenities. And if you have a strong relationship with the hotel, and it could be such a thing that earlier in the week you had discussed, hey, I think the Four Seasons, blah, 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 would be a great property for you. But then they go ahead and they book it. You might have a case if you have a relationship with the hotel to say, I would like to take this booking over. I had a 2-hour conversation. This is the hotel I recommended. But standard protocol would not be to do it. If it were me, what I would do in that situation, I would use that as a learning lesson for your client. Okay. Your client should be booking through you, right? And if in that case, your friend or your client booked that Four Seasons, you could easily say to them, oh my gosh, I wish you would have let me know. We're a preferred partner with Four Seasons. I would have been able to get you a daily breakfast. I would have been able to get you an upgrade. And unfortunately, there's nothing I can do now about it. Mm-hmm. So that's the long and short of it. It's generally not done unless there's a very specific reason for doing it, or you have a really good relationship with that hotel. Use it as a learning experience. The other part of the question, which the anonymous did not ask, is what about corporate bookings? So in some cases, a corporate entity who's doing a meeting might negotiate a group contract with a hotel. In that case, they would turn that booking over to you. Now, normally it's a non-commissionable rate, so there's not any money involved in it, but it allows you to take over that reservation so you can handle the coordination of payments and rooming lists and all the nuances that go with meeting planning. Now, if it is a non-commissionable rate that comes over to you, right? So corporation negotiated a rate, it's a net rate, they turn it over to you. You need to build in your service fee to that that corporate client to cover your costs of managing those bookings. So,
That makes sense. So one thing, in case people that are listening aren't familiar with takeover bookings, could you explain it just really quickly, maybe like 20 seconds?
so again, it's very difficult. You really cannot take over a booking. The hotel itself will. So if I'm a client of yours, I make a reservation. The only person that can cancel that reservation is me. All right. So as a travel advisor, even though you're the travel advisor for me, you can't call the property and take it over. Again, there might be some private conversations in there. If you know the sales manager, you have a long-term record with them. You can have proof that the client's done it. But it's all kind of sticky and it's very specific to unique situations. The majority of the time, you're not going to be able to take over a booking because the hotel's not going to allow it. You have to have your client authorize it. That's an awkward conversation to have. So,
It's a lot of work. I mean, depending on how much the hotel is, if your commission is, going to be $60 or something, is that
right.
going to be worth it for you? But the other option is too, you can have your client cancel their booking if you can get the same rate or one with amenities and then just rebook it. So
Absolutely. And I will tell you, advisors do that, and they do that
yep.
frequently. You had better know, and the caveat there is you'd better know what type of rate they've actually booked, where they've booked it. You don't want to have them cancel a non-refundable deposit, right?
Yep.
And you better be able to get the same category of room for them.
Yes, exactly.
And at the same rate. And then also keep in mind too, your client may have gone directly to the hotel's website. And some hotels, not so much in this day and age because everybody's traveling, will have web only booking rates. So you might not be able to match the rate. So you better, cross your
Do your
T's,
homework.
dot your I's, do your homework.
Do
Yeah.
your homework before you cancel that booking. Okay, so the second part of Anonymous's question is, how does a travel advisor compete when a hotel is offering discounted rates, but we can't provide perks unless it's the bar rate, which is best available rate? And how do we convey this to our client who may see a cheaper rate online? So what's your advice there, Connie?
Well, first and foremost, and a lot of people really aren't aware of this, hotels do know where their revenue stream comes from. Okay. So if you are booking on an Expedia Tap or anything like that, they see that the booking comes from Expedia Tap. And because they've negotiated lower rates with those entities, right? They're not going to get the refurbished rooms. They're not going to get the best of the house that's available at the time of booking. So if that's important to your clients, that is something that you can point out. Also, if you're handling all components of that reservation, it is good for you to have everything in one bucket. It's good for the traveler. So if you're doing a full-on trip, they see a rate and it's a few dollars cheaper. And a lot of times, especially with Expedia, it's like maybe $10 cheaper because it's a lead-in rate that they've done. What you really need to hone in on is your expertise and the service that you provide. Do you call the hotels and let them know you have a preferred guest coming in? Do you do, those are the things you do that self-booking doesn't allow for. So again, it's not just the hotel booking, it's all along how you have sold your services of what you do for your client there. And I'll be honest, it's a sticky wicket. It doesn't matter how affluent your traveler is. Some of them just, they hone in on that number. And, if that's the case, you let them have it. If you explain what your services are and how you do that full service concierge work for them, they're going to understand it. It's all in the education process.
Yeah, and that's a great point too about where they know where the revenue streams are coming from and that those revenue channels that perhaps don't give the best return on investment are the first to be walked from the property if it's overbooked. There's a lot of things that you can talk to your client about to help educate them on the value that you provide. So that's perfect. Thanks, Connie.
Well, and one other thing too, just if you think about it, so an individual booking a reservation, what type of clout or status do they have with that hotel? Now, if they're Marriott Bonvoy way up on the high and all the other ones, that might be a little bit different. But if they're booking their own and they're a one-off traveler, it's not nearly the same amount of influence that a host agency that's doing millions with that property chain is going to have if there is any conflict resolution that needs to be made. So there's just a lot of benefits that you provide, but how you describe that to your client and how you continually educate them along the way as far as what your value is, that's the critical part.
Yeah, and it's such a skill that everyone should be sharpening because we need to do a lot of education with the clients in the travel industry and how it works. Because I think people, your regular consumers, just don't understand the nuances behind it, and there are a lot of nuances. As many people who are new to the industry have their eyes opened when they come into it. They're like, "Oh my gosh."
And if you book it yourself, who are you going to call if there's a problem?
Yes, exactly. Well, luckily, let's see. We've got our next question in from Elaine C. So Elaine C says, beyond thankful that I found Har 7-day Setup Accelerator Course. Thank you for offering this invaluable resource for newbies. For those that don't know, that's kind of our course we launched during Host Week this year to help you get your agency set up, and it comes with a lot more support. It's like our 7-day setup, but it has a lot more resources involved with it. So Elaine says, my question is, I assume there are very good reasons why the modules in the course are set up in the order they are, but is there a reason why I shouldn't dive into the search for my host agency before have I completed the earlier modules? Specifically the ones on nailing my niche, creating a name, registering my business, setting up my finances, etc. I find myself that I'm getting hung up on the modules on picking a niche. That one's so hard, Elaine. And the name. And oh, there we go. And naming my business. That one is the hardest one. And I don't want to delay the process of signing up with a host agency to get that going. So, Connie, I know you haven't gone through our 7-day setup accelerator course, but I'm gonna pull up our kind of curriculum on it. So for people that are watching on YouTube, they'll be able to see that. But while I'm going over that, do you maybe want to talk about, like, for a host agency, why it's helpful for the people to have had their LLC set up, to have their name registered, to kind of have things in order before they join? But I will say it's not, people go about this in different ways. But Connie, maybe you can talk about why it's handy on the host agency side,
Sure.
for host agencies to have, or agents to have this all lined up.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I did take a peek at the titles of your system and how you have it laid out, and it's laid out brilliantly. It really is a good
Stop, Connie.
No, I'm serious. I mean, it is really good. And I'll address like the host agency when to start investigation. I mean, depending on the individual, that could possibly come up a little bit. You might be able to start a little sooner, but certainly you need to know what type of business you're going to have. You need to know what you want to sell, what you're passionate about. So that all comes, as far as discovering your niche. And I think people really get hung up on niche, finding a niche, and it's very, very important. And yet by the same token, it shouldn't be that difficult for you. If you love adventure travel, that becomes your niche. If you are maybe a young family member and you've got kids in grade school, maybe it's going to be family travel because that's where your organic marketplace is going to be, other families in the same situation, or it could be multi-generational. So you need to think about, number one, how you like to travel yourself, what you're passionate about, because those are going to be the easiest things to learn. It's important for you to know what you want to sell or what you think you're going to sell based on your organic market before you approach a host agency, because some host agencies are really strong in cruising. Some are really strong in celebratory. Some are really strong in luxury. And if you're a mid-market, if that's going to be where your clientele is, you need to find a host agency that matches what you want your business model to be.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other things besides destinations and travel types. There's also For example, the level of service that you provide to your clients, the level of luxury that you provide. So you need to have a really strong understanding of who you are, who your clients are going to be. And keep in mind, when you're building a business, sometimes you have to do a 90-degree turn, and that's okay. I don't want you to
Yes.
think you're locked into it, but you need to have a starting place, because that makes you much more intelligent when you speak to the host agencies. So if somebody comes to me and they have their LLC and they've got their marketing plan and they've got a knowledge of where they're going to, how they're going to market and where they're going to go, it's so much easier for me to tell them if we're a good fit for them. I
Yes.
can say, we can augment you here, here, and here, and these are the resources we have. And that helps you decide whether we're a good fit. It helps me to know about you, to know if you're a good fit for us. So it's kind of like a dating service.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say, that it's like, if you're going into a dating thing but have no idea what you're looking for, your chance of success is going to be a lot less than if you're kind of like, I know I want to be with someone who wants to have kids or not have kids, and someone that wants to stay in the local area because my family is important to me. Like, if you think of those things ahead of time, it's going to save you a lot more work in the long run. So those, that's, yeah, I'm right there with you, Connie.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And
dating 101.
yep. And if you don't have a name yet, that's probably okay with me, because names are difficult. It's very, very, and I cannot tell you how many advisors that have been newer to the industry and they come in with one name and 2 years later they're doing,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, they change. Rebranding is hard, but it's better to do it sooner than later,
Mhm.
So, and researching, I would definitely, let's talk about researching the host agencies, have an idea of what you need and what you want. Okay. Then talk to the host agency and find out what they offer and what, and then I would get recommendations from referrals that your host agency, your potential host agency would give you. I mean, I think that's really critical. And I would keep a spreadsheet. I'm a spreadsheet person. Okay. I'd keep a spreadsheet, the things I need to know, and then the ancillary things. And a lot of it comes down to personal feel and personality. You need to be in a place where you feel comfortable with everybody that's there, that the support's going to be there, that you're comfortable that that's going to happen, that you're going to be heard. So I would also, if you can kind of gauge hospitality, if you will, or availability in that host agency analysis. And I know, Steph, you've got kind of a form that you recommend your advisors use. I know I've created one, but I think it's really, really critical. And so, yeah, it should be at least 2/3 of the way through your onboarding list or your development list.
Mhm. And Elaine, there's a couple things I want to point out. Like, number one, when Connie talks about things changing, I think a lot of new advisors will get stuck, like thinking, "Oh, I've got to get it right this first time."
No, you don't.
Entrepreneurs, things are very dynamic. You change, you switch, things change as you go along. So don't feel like if you don't get it right this first time, you're going to be a failure at business. Many, many people change things as their businesses evolve and they learn more about the industry. And the other thing I would say about making sure, like, kind of doing the process in the order of this day setup accelerator. For some host agencies, they require that you have an LLC, and that means that you're going to, it's just easier if you have your name picked out because you're going to need an LLC and you don't have to change it. And then if you're going to need to set up your bank accounts, and you need to have an LLC thing in order to, you need to have your business name. If you're going to set up a business bank account, you need to have your LLC set up. The bank will require that you bring that paperwork in. So a lot of these things are tied into each other, and it will make it so you don't have to go backwards and reset things. So an example of this is, like, let's say you decided you were going to start with a sole proprietor just so you could get off the ground, and you kind of name it whatever you want. But then, like, 2 months in, you've chosen your host agency, and you're like, oh, I've decided I want to do golf tours. And so you totally change your name. You're going to have to go back, and then you say, oh, I want to do an LLC. I hadn't thought about that. That makes more sense. I need to protect my assets. Then you actually have to set up a whole new bank account, because a sole proprietor is different from a LLC one at the banks. And so you'll need to have a new bank account, which means you'll need to change that out with your host agency. It just creates a lot of backwards work. So having said that, Elaine, it's if you go out of order, people have gone out of order, and it is, just know that there's going to be some backward stepping that you're going to have to do. But it does make it easier when you think of these things ahead of time, and hopefully makes it a smoother process for you.
And usually people are, when I talk to them, if they haven't discovered a name, they've started the process. So they're down the line. They're just debating on the name. And remember, if you create an LLC, you can have a DBA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can have multiple DBAs if you change your focus. And be careful of cutesy names. I would just give you, that thing. There was somebody who had, it's so
Cute
funny.
Puppy Travels.
What's it? Well, it had to do, I can't give you the name of it, but it definitely went to a specific market. And now she's much more upscale. So it made no sense. And rebranding is difficult. So, kind of keep in mind, cute is good, but cutesy is not good. And then also know that things do change. And I know we're kind of running along on time here, but I'll just give you a story of a good friend and advisor of mine. She started the business probably 15 years ago. She was in her late 20s, and she did destination weddings. That was her niche. That was her specialty. I'll never do anything but destination weddings. I think I heard come out of her mouth. I also heard, I'm not going to do Disney, and I'm not going to do cruises, right? She had a very focused niche, which worked for about 10 years until, guess what? All those married couples had kids. They were doing Disney. They were doing multi-gen. So now she's doing cruises. She's doing FIT Europe. She's doing all these things she thought she never would. So
yeah, businesses evolve. Businesses evolve, and you might get bored too. Like become really sick of destination weddings at some point in time, or of cruises, and have discovered Europe. So I always keep that mind open, because businesses are very dynamic. And I'm going to put a link into the 7-day Setup Accelerator course for anyone that's interested. And then the other thing I'm going to also put a link in. Connie, you mentioned kind of having that Excel sheet to ask the questions to your different host agencies as you're vetting them. We have a really thorough one on the site. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. So let's see, Connie, what is the best way? I'm going to put a link to your profile on the site so people can read reviews if they're interested in learning more about Montecito. And then also they can check out your website, all sorts of other great stuff. If someone has questions and is looking to learn more about your program, what's the best way to reach you or someone on your team?
Well, it would be me. My email is connieM@ytc.com. And my telephone number is 805-456-2545. You can find me on LinkedIn, although my profile's been compromised and I'm fixing it right now. So maybe that's not the best way.
I'll put a link to it. And just know that if it doesn't look like Connie, that, if it's an alien or something, that's the compromised part of it.
Or if my name is now Emma Penelope.
Oh, that's adorable.
No, it's not. It's a hassle.
Which, by the way, so during host week, one of the sessions we're having is about protecting your social media profiles from hackers. So Connie, make sure to tune in.
I will.
Let's see. So some of the co-hosts we have coming up. So next week, October 13th, we have Chad Burt from Outside Agents is going to be our co-host. October 20th, we'll have Jen Lee from Travel Planners International joining us. And let's see, before we sign off for today, just a reminder to sign up for Host Week. It is the last week of January. I don't remember the dates right now, but it's the last week of January. It's a week full of fun and education, host interviews, consortia interviews. So we hope you can join us. Connie, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, as always, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yes, and everyone have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next Friday, 12 p.m. Central Time.
Bye-bye.